Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm chatting with Simon Quick from Canadian Copper. Folks, every time I talk to Simon, it seems like he has just hit a big achievement, whether it's permitting or it's acquiring a mill or it's getting an investment at a premium to the last market price. Simon just seems to quietly have his head down. He gets things done. He's straight to the point. And I think that if you are looking for a small copper junior in Canada, this is a name you'll want to have on your watch list. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Simon, it's good to see you again.
You too. Thanks so much for having us.
So let's start talking about copper and what's happening from a high level here. Copper recently got added to the draft list for U.S. critical minerals. Do you think that this is going to have any impact on copper production out of the U.S.?
I think so, but more importantly, it's the objectives of what the administration is. So the US produces roughly 5% of global copper, and domestically, they produce 70% of their consumption. So call that a million tons a year. They're looking to close that gap. So call it 300,000 tons of copper supply in the US. The current administration is trying to incentivize, and that really gets them neutral in terms of what they produce and consume and more reliant on domestic supply, which is probably smart. So hopefully the new kind of political direction and policies help permitting, help construction, and really close that gap such that they're more self-sufficient on the middle supply.
How do you see U.S. policy impacting companies that are producing copper in Canada?
The metaphor where if the US gets sick, Canada catches a cold, I think is apt here in the sense that we're economically intertwined. And more importantly, if the US policy is positive and you start to see a pickup in copper supply domestically in the US, I hope the Canadian government looks at whatever those policies are that are successful and start to maybe adapt or mimic some of those in Canada. And then we see growth in the Canadian critical mineral supply, copper included. So let the US be maybe a first mover, and then we'll benefit after if the policies are successful.
So I want to turn the discussion to Canada Copper. The big news as of late is that you're raising $10 million, 8 million of which has effectively been secured via lead order. What can you tell us?
No, it is. Yeah, we announced a $10 million offering non-brokered on Monday of this week, and Ocean Partners, who's already in our capital stack at 5%, offered to contribute up to a maximum of 8 million of the 10, so 80% of the book at a market premium. So we priced it at 20 cents a share with a half warrant at 25. To me, that's such an important step for most juniors to have a strong, steady partner that can provide both capital, financial expertise, and technical bench strength. And that's what Ocean does. And we're just very fortunate to have that group continue to participate along our development journey, which includes obviously acquiring the Caribou processing complex.
Especially, too, I have to say, it's incredibly unique in Canada to see a company announce a financing at a premium. Especially like for a penny stock, we never see that.
It's just a testament to who that group is from an integrity perspective, and they're really value seekers. And I think between Ocean Partners and Canadian Copper, we've fomented a really strong relationship. And their point of view is this hopefully will set a new floor in the equity price, and then follow on investors will start to see some of the value. And frankly speaking, until the assets are consolidated, there's still some inherent risk. And I think Ocean realizes with this financing, it helps de-risk that stage of the company, whereby we're complementing of the deposit itself and adding it to a concentrator complex.
With this funding now secured, what's the next steps to advancing the Murray Brook deposit?
I think if we step back a 20,000 foot view, the goal is to get to a construction decision at some point in 2027. So if we work backwards, right now we're finishing up some of the baseline permitting at Murray Brook with the objective of having that task done at the end of the year. And that feeds into the environmental impact assessment registration in the first quarter of next year. That objective really sets the tone for the rest of the development. And really, I think for us, it's a matter of how we can quickly fill the design gaps and then get the permit approved and really put together the rest of the development team and try and get some production here shortly.
How are environmental studies progressing here?
Progressing well. So most of the time sensitive studies related to birds and migratory patterns occurred in June and July of this year at site. So those are complete. And right now we're doing some of the aquatic studies that's related to the deposit and connecting it to the concentrator complex. This will allow us to count river crossings, how many culverts we need in the design, and that's progressing well. With, again, in terms of timeline, all of those studies will be complete by year end.
Do you have any sense of the timeline in terms of production being achieved here?
Yeah, our objective is to get to that construction decision first in 2027. And then ultimately, it's going to be a function of capital available, the design progression, and us having the correct team to then execute. But we've forecasted 36 months from the word go is, I think, an achievable target for concentrate production out of the facility.
Canadian Copper previously indicated that further drilling was required to define the final open pit limit. Has this exploration already been undertaken?
It is not. It's permitted. We've a 3,000-meter program across 15 holes to this copper gold zone that still remains open at depth and along strike. We'll look to do that program as part of the rest of the de-risking initiatives and infrastructure layout planning with the design next year.
All right, Simon, last question for you. If I'm an investor watching this, which I am, or if I have you guys on my watch list and I just want to follow the story for the big timelines over the next year, what am I looking out for?
I think we're going to do this quite quickly. It's going to be close Caribou acquisition this quarter, get the appropriate team in place to develop the asset, have the permit submitted early next year, and then run through the rest of the de-risking and engineering activities such that we're ready by the end of 2026 for the final run of a construction decision in 2027. Sprinkled in between that will be some exploration and some engineering updates, but really, I think we're going to be the only producer in New Brunswick with a approved mill and a soon-to-be approved deposit that make an exciting story in this base metal environment.
All right. Well, Simon, thanks so much for hopping on here. It's always a pleasure when we get to speak. I feel like every time I talk to you, you materially move your deal forward, not with something that's fluffy, but with something that is absolutely real and tangible for the market. So I appreciate, as a shareholder, I appreciate everything that you have done for shareholders. And I hope to have you back on here in the near future with some more positive announcements.
Great. Thanks for having us again. It's good to see you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching.